Hi, I'm Andrew Fleming. I'm a reporter at the Vancouver Courier, and I'm sitting here today with my lovely colleague, Cheryl Rossi. Cheryl covers a lot of things in the arts community here in Vancouver, and I guess kind of a major thing happened this week. The Ridge Theatre, one of the last single-screen movie theaters in town, is now down and on the ground, and I understand they lost the stained glass after all. What can you tell us about it?
Sure. There was a lot of protest when people found out that the Ridge was going to be developed because, people loved the bowling alley. It was such a family gathering spot and served all different ages. And then the loss of the theater. But David Chapman, who contacted the Courier, he wasn't one of the people who protested. He knows things changed. But he had also read that all these different parts of the theater were going to be reused, and he just couldn't believe it when he heard this shattering of glass and said he saw a crane go right through the middle. And it was, so to him it's more about heritage, because he's lived in the neighborhood for 14 years, and he sees houses that are perfectly fine knocked down, and just all this loss of heritage features in Vancouver.
Stained glass really does seem like a bigger loss. I mean, I could see it being very expensive to transport it and all the rest, but we're such a young city. Like, whenever you lose anything that's got any kind of iconic value, I guess it seems a real shame. And that was first installed, I guess, back in the 70s by Leonard Shen. Is that his name, Shine?
Shine, yeah. He took over the theater in 78, and he had that made, and it was actually based on a vintage projector that they had in the theater. So Cineplex was supposed to take it for a new multiplex being built on Marine Drive, but Leonard told me 2 weeks ago they decided it wasn't going to fit after all, and that didn't leave much time, to make any changes, and removing them would have cost a lot of money.
So Cineplex didn't take out a press release to let everybody know that they were deciding not to take out the stained glass. But the cool thing from that old structure was the bowling pin. Now, that did find a new home at some expense. Do you know where it went exactly?
Well, I know what I read in the Vancouver Sun.
Okay.
And
Go Vancouver Sun.
and so there was a man who owns an antique shop who kept driving by and wondering who was going to take the giant bowling pin, and then local philanthropist Joseph Wask was also interested, and they got together and got it taken down. And that article said, I think they paid $5,000 for it, but then all the work to take it down, in the end they figure is going to cost $25,000. But people want to hold on to these pieces of history as everything becomes newer and newer in Vancouver.
So, sorry, is it a private gallery, or is it on display somewhere?
I think it's going to go in Joseph Wask's backyard.
Oh, yeah. All right. And hopefully people can come by and check it out, throw stones at it. Well, it is kind of cool, though. It's like the W on the Woodwards building. I mean, it's not much, but at least they didn't just junk it.
Well, and that's the other thing, that the Ridge sign is going to be going on to it's supposed to be going on to the new development, the condo and commercial development. And when I asked Leonard Shine about that earlier this year, because that kind of annoyed some people, he was happy. He was happy to have that piece of history saved.
And I suppose, as opposed to coming up with some little new name for your condo, you can automatically just sort of write on the... Anyway.
Well, that seems to happen a lot in Vancouver.
So what else is going on? Oh, yeah, tell me about the Creative Lab project. There's something going on at Vancouver Public Library. Instead of just being a quiet library, they have some sort of creative cultural lab they want to build. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, I think, the library is working a lot to engage citizens and include everyone and change with the times. And so I don't think this is going to be a loud thing. It'll be contained, but they want to create a lab where people can go and record music and record oral histories and make videos and make books and share their own stories, which eventually they hope to share in the library. So everybody's connecting with everyone else.
And this is affiliated with this big Touch event that's happening, I guess, tonight. It'll be over by the time this goes to air. But it's a fundraiser. Is it kind of a fait accompli, or do they need to get some more cash for it? What do you do?
Yeah, they figure it'll cost $500,000 to $600,000 to build the whole thing. And they do expect it to open next year. So they had some sources of money. The chief librarian, Sandra Singh, said that looked pretty solid, but not solid enough that she told me. But the Vancouver Library Foundation raises money for the library, and she was happy they took this project on. And then Malcolm Levy, who does the New Forms Festival and did a really cool thing at Great Northern Way campus during the Olympics with plants that sensed your body heat, and I think they laughed when you walked by, and this table that Bjork had used on concert that you can make sound by touching it has curated this whole event, and so I think it's going to be really cool in the atrium of the central branch of the library.
That does sound very cool, actually, I got to admit. It's interesting what we were talking about, new things in the library these days. Like, I noticed the other day that libraries in Vancouver, they're all open now on Sunday, and the reason they're now open on Sunday is because I guess because there's more and more electronic things, I mean, like they're able to spread the resources around a bit better because they don't need librarians at all the checkouts because you can check it out yourself. You can do more and more yourself, and it sounds like the library is doing their best to change with the times.
Yeah, that's the sense I get as well.
Right, well, so long as you keep providing a place for people to sleep, that's always important. What else is new? Oh, the Carving Pavilion. So I'd like, for those of you who live in the Britannia area, I used to go to the gym at the Britannia Centre, and I've always been curious about these giant trees that are always outside of in between Britannia Secondary, Elementary, and the Community Centre. There's some talk of making that a permanent sort of Aboriginal carving centre. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw this report that went from a committee at the school board that's going to the main school board meeting. So it's a project between the city, the Britannia Community Centre, and the schools. Because I guess last year, this Carving Pavilion has been there for 8 years, and lots of things have happened there. But last year they did this, an artist did a house poll for an Aboriginal healing centre downtown, and the new district Aboriginal principal really saw how it had a lot of meaning for students and people and brought them together and thought, this makes a lot of sense.
And it does. It has one of the highest concentrations of Aboriginal people, I think, anywhere in Canada in this neighborhood. It really makes kind of an obvious location to have this sort of thing. And is it sort of affiliated with the school at all? I mean, do kids get woodworking?
I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, but I know part of the thing is that it has to tie into the curriculum. Okay. I spoke to Cynthia Lowe from Britannia Community Centre, and when they were drawing out their agreement, they had to make sure it was something that would actually work with the school. What was I going to say? She said, no, I forget.
This is kind of a dumb question, too, because there doesn't seem to be a roof over it. I'd always see the big poles, which I guess become totem poles. Well, actually, you're not supposed to call them totem poles. Apparently, that's kind of a misnomer that we Europeans have forced on people. Oh, a totem being an idol, and they call them story poles, because every pole tells a story of a family as opposed to being a totem, which is something you sort of worship. But anyway, just PC aside, I thought. Where I was going with this is I've always seen these poles there, but I didn't see any smaller carvings. So maybe they'd have a kind of a facility somewhere. Is that the idea, or is it kind of an outdoor carving thing? Do you know?
The school board report called it a permanent facility, but then Cynthia Lowe said that it's going to be post and beam, so it can be moved. And what I was going to say is that. She said it's so much better than having some Aboriginal carver come talk to students for 15 minutes or an hour. Whereas when they have people carving there, they have a new artist in residence. The kids can drop by and see someone working, and it's an everyday occurrence, and they can chat with them, and they can see, this is a thing that goes on. It's not some other thing. Yeah.
Well, that sounds really cool. Thanks for telling us about it. I think that's about all the time we have for now. I'm Andrew Fleming. This is Cheryl Rossi. Tune in next week, and we'll blather on then too. Okay. Bye.
感谢收看今天的大温故事，我们下期再见。